Hello everyone, we'll spend the next few minutes talking about the Professional Scrum Master certification today. We are very confident to say that this brief set of slides, along with the Scrum Guide and the attached questions, is all you need to know to master your PSM. PSM has 80 questions, and with this content, most of our subscribers passed with an average score of 98% and above. Scrum is an empirical process-driven framework. Empiricism means knowledge comes from experience. It uses principles of lean thinking to reduce waste and focuses on the essentials. It uses an iterative and incremental approach to solve problems, to control risks, and to optimize predictability. Scrum is lightweight, which makes it easier to understand and work independently. It has 3 roles, 3 artifacts, and 5 events in all. The sprint is a container event that contains 4 formal events within it. These 4 events can be inspected and adapted. Scrum events are designed to provoke change. The Scrum framework is based on the 3 pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency means work must be visible to those performing and receiving it. Important decisions are based on the state of the artifact. Low artifact transparency can lead to decisions that diminish value and increase risks. Transparency leads to inspection, and inspection without transparency is misleading and wasteful. Artifacts and progress must be inspected frequently to detect problems or variances. If a deviation is found, adjustments are to be made as soon as possible to minimize further deviation. Adaptation becomes difficult if people and teams are not empowered or self-managing. The Scrum values of commitment, courage, focus, openness, respect give direction to the Scrum team with regards to their work, actions, and behaviors. A fundamental unit of Scrum is a small team of people working together, typically 10 people or less. Smaller teams have been found to communicate better and are more productive. A typical Scrum team shares the same product owner, product backlog, and a product goal. Other characteristics of a Scrum team are that there are no sub-teams, no hierarchies, the teams are cross-functional, self-managing, and is expected to be a cohesive unit working on the product goal. Working in sprints at a sustainable pace improves the Scrum team's focus and consistency. The entire team is responsible to produce valuable, useful increments every sprint. The Scrum team is divided into 3 basic roles, that of developers, product owners, and the Scrum Master. The developers are committed to create any aspect of usable increment each sprint. The developers are also solely responsible for the sprint backlog. Some of the most prominent tasks of the developers include creating the sprint backlog, creating and following the definition of done to instill quality, adapting the plan each day to reach their sprint goal, and holding each other accountable as professionals. The product owner. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the Scrum team's work. A product owner's major tasks include effective product backlog management, developing and communicating the product goal, creating and communicating the product backlog items, ordering of the product backlog items, and ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. The product owner is always one person, not a committee. All decisions taken by the product owner must be respected. Product owners can either work on their own or delegate all of the above tasks. Product owners represent the need of all stakeholders, which is visible in the way they order the product backlog. And lastly, the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is the true leader who serves the Scrum team and the organization. A Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide, and for the Scrum team's effectiveness. They do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theory and practice. A Scrum Master works with the Scrum team, the product owner, and the organization in different ways. For the Scrum team, the Scrum Master works as a coach who helps them in creating high-value increments, meeting the definition of done. A Scrum Master is the remover of impediments in the Scrum team's progress and ensures all events happen, are positive, productive, and time-boxed. For the product owner, a Scrum Master ensures He or she helps with techniques for effective product goal definition, product backlog management, establishing product planning in an empirical manner. A Scrum Master also facilitates stakeholder collaborations and helps the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items. For the organization, the role of the Scrum Master is crucial in ensuring Scrum is followed as laid down in theory. He or she leads, trains, coaches for effective Scrum adoption. A Scrum Master also removes barriers between stakeholders and the Scrum teams. Sprint events. Sprint events help create regularity. They minimize the need for other meetings. Events are held at the same time and place to reduce complexity. Not conducting any sprint events results in lost opportunities to inspect and adapt. A new sprint starts immediately as the last one concludes. The sprint is a container event. It contains 4 formal events within it. These events are sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. A sprint can also be considered as a short project. It is often called the heartbeat of Scrum, where ideas are turned into value. During a sprint, the developers manage the progress of work and update the sprint backlog as and when needed. A sprint uses time boxes, which is used to limit the work in progress. A new sprint starts immediately following the last. New work is loaded into the sprint backlog immediately upon identification. Sprints can be cancelled if sprint goal becomes obsolete. Only product owners can cancel a sprint. A sprint length can be determined by the level of technical uncertainty, the risk of being disconnected from stakeholders, and the ability to go to market with release. It is best to have sprints of consistent length throughout the development efforts. Longer sprints make sprint goal invalid, increase complexity, increase risk of cost and effort, and result in lost learning opportunities. The product goal, the sprint goal, the level of quality are 3 things that can never change in a sprint. Whereas the product backlog is refined, scope can be negotiated or clarified. The sprint backlog and the definition of done are updated as and when needed. The output to a sprint are a done increment of work, which should meet the definition of done. An increment is a concrete stepping stone towards the product goal. Multiple teams working on the same product should have the same definition of done. To elaborate, an increment should reduce long-term operational costs and increase customer satisfaction. A definition of done is what assesses an increment's completion. The DoD is created by the organization or the development team. To break down further, the definition of done ensures artifact transparency. It helps the team decide the number of items that can be picked for a sprint. It assesses when work is complete to form an increment, and it helps control the cost of developing and maintaining a product. Any unfinished work during the sprint is placed back in the product backlog. Sprint planning is the key planning event. It is an 8-hour event where outsiders are allowed to participate. Questions like what can be done and how to do it are discussed in sprint planning. The event is attended by the entire Scrum team, and experts can be invited by the Scrum team for expert opinion. The inputs to the sprint planning are the product backlog, the upcoming capacity of the development team, the past performance of the development team, the latest product increment, and their definition of done. To elaborate further, the product backlog is an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. Ordering is done according to the size, description, and value. It is also considered to be a single source of work for the entire product. The salient characteristics for a product backlog item to be selected for a sprint are that they can be done within one sprint, that they are clearly broken down into smaller, more precise items, and they do not have any external dependence. Multiple teams use the same product backlog to ensure clear definition of requirements. The 3 major goals of the sprint planning session are to develop the sprint goal, to develop the sprint backlog, and to define the product backlog items. Topics such as why is this sprint valuable, what can be done during the sprint, and how will the work be done are majorly discussed during sprint planning. The sprint goal is typically defined in the first part of the sprint planning meeting through the following main steps. The product owner presents the ordered product backlog items to the team. The team discusses and understands the work for the sprint. The team forecasts and commits on the items that can be done. The major output to sprint planning is the plan of what can be done and how to do it, the sprint goal, which is an overarching target, and the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is a plan by and for the developers for the sprint. It is a highly visible real-time picture of the work to be done. A sprint backlog consists of a product goal, the product backlog items selected for that sprint, plus the plan for delivering them. The work plan is decomposed for the first few days of the sprint. Next is the daily scrum. The daily scrum is the key inspect and adapt meeting. It is attended by developers, and it is only mandatory for developers to attend. However, the Scrum Master can ensure that the meeting is held. Attendance by the Scrum Master is optional. There are no external stakeholders or participants in this meeting. The major goal of the daily Scrum is to discuss and plan work, to focus on the progress towards the sprint goal, and to produce actionable plan for the next day. The purpose of the daily Scrum is to create focus and self-management, to improve communication, to identify impediments, to promote quick decision-making, and to eliminate the need for other meetings. The major activities undertaken during daily Scrum are to inspect the progress towards the sprint goal since the last daily Scrum, to adapt the sprint backlog as necessary, to adjust the upcoming planned work, and to forecast the upcoming sprint work for the next 24 hours. The output of the daily Scrum is an adjusted sprint backlog and the plan for the next 24 hours. The sprint review is to inspect the increment and to adapt the product backlog. This is the only event that leads to a change in the product backlog. It is attended by the entire Scrum team, and it is very much open to external stakeholders. Together, all the attendees inspect work to understand what was accomplished in the sprint, determine future adaptations, and analyze what had changed in the environment of the team and the stakeholders. The major activities undertaken during sprint review are that the Scrum team presents the results of their work to key stakeholders. Progress towards the product goal is discussed. The Scrum team and the stakeholders review what was accomplished in the entire sprint, and the Scrum team and the stakeholders discuss what has changed in the environment. The output is to adjust the product backlog as needed and for the attendees to plan new work. And lastly, the sprint retrospective. The sprint retrospective is to inspect the Scrum team and to adapt the sprint backlog. Attendance is mandatory by the Scrum team. The product owner participates as a participant, whereas the Scrum Master joins as a facilitator and as a participant. No external stakeholders are invited or allowed during the sprint retrospective. The goal of the sprint retrospective is to understand how quality can be increased. Here, the team inspects itself and creates a plan for improvements to be enacted during the next sprint. The major activities undertaken during sprint retrospective are to inspect how the last sprint went with regards to individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and their definition of done. Secondly, to discuss what went well during the sprint, the problems they encountered, and how those problems were or were not solved. And lastly, any false assumptions identified and their origins are explored. The output to the sprint retrospective is to identify the most helpful changes to improve the team's effectiveness. Most impactful improvements are addressed as soon as possible. The sprint backlog could be adjusted for the next sprint, and the definition of done could also be adjusted. With sprint retrospective, the sprint comes to an end.